hello, everyone. I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to our Center Court session with three fabulous schools. Very different, all of them, and we'll get into that shortly. I want to welcome you because this is a really good time to be exploring MBA programs. And we have the best of the best over the next 2 days. Perhaps you were watching earlier sessions with my partner and colleague, Matt Simons. I hope you were. They were incredibly informative, and we're going to make this one as informative as those. So let me introduce you to three fantastic people who represent three amazing schools. The veteran in the group, Bruce Delmonico, he has been at Yale School of Management for 18 and a half years. He's assistant dean for admissions. There are few people in the world who know more about MBA admissions than Bruce. We have J.R. McGrath, the executive director of master admissions at Carnegie Mellon University's Tepper School, who is relatively new in the job. So he'll have the newer perspective. And then from the University of Florida, the Warrington College of Business, we have Naz Erenguk, who has been a long friend of Poets and Quants. She's director of admissions, and she's been at Florida since 2011, actually, and has been working in the MBA office for a dozen years already. So she's got a wealth of experience to talk about MBA admissions. The title of this session is Find the Right Fit, Exploring the MBA Program for You. And I always think that fit is sort of a very difficult thing to get your arms around. I mean, how do you know that you fit in with a particular program, a culture, a school? And so I want to talk about how intangible that is and how in fact you might be able to assess whether a school is a perfect fit for you for your MBA experience. Bruce, what's your general advice on this?
Yeah, no, I'm first of all, John, thank you so much for having me and for letting me participate. And it's always great to talk and to be able to be part of these sessions. And I think it's a great question. And one of the things I would point out is, fit can mean, as you say, can mean different things, and there are aspects of it that relate to the evaluation process. But I think the part of your fit, the agency involved with you assessing programs and figuring out where you will thrive and where you will grow and where you will learn the most is important. And I think at a core level, and it can mean different things to different people. Everybody's looking for something slightly different or maybe radically different. And so you have to think about what matters to you. So part of it is starting with a little introspection, a little self-assessment. What are you looking for? What do you want to get out of the MBA? What will make a difference to you in terms of what kinds of program you want to be part of? And then it's a matter of sort of doing the research, talking to people, being part of sessions like this, talking to students and really doing your research and kind of like digging into it and seeing what, based on conversations with students and alumni and staff and others, looking at sort of things like the mission and the values, the culture, other things that might be meaningful to you. Where do you see the alignment? And so I think that's kind of how the process, broadly speaking, kind of could play out.
Yeah, and I think in many cases, I often say geography is destiny. Now, that's not always true because the MBA degree can travel and does travel well, not only within the United States, but across borders. And there's no doubt that that's true. But it is also true that it tends that the alumni networks are strongest in and around the areas of the school. So Yale obviously has a worldwide reputation, but I bet your concentration of alumni in the New York metropolitan area is massive compared to anywhere else, I would think. And with Tepper, I would bet that your alumni core is in and around Pittsburgh area, and for Florida, same thing down there. So now it's true, your alums are all over the place, but that's one factor that I would think would govern fit. Another factor would be, okay, are there strengths that one program has over another if you wanted a career in consulting or product management in tech or finance? Naz, what are your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, thank you, John. And I think, to your point, finding that fit it really goes back to what Bruce was talking about in terms of what it is that that student actually wants. And so the big picture is, of course, everybody can expect to get that business acumen, right, from any of our programs. But it's really kind of, and I would actually go even further and talk above and beyond just the career component of what other things, how do you want to round out your experience? And so finding a program that touches on not only the career placement and having that as a high, high touch and having the strong rankings and the strong numbers to back that, but it's also the as you pointed out, the intangible. What professional development, what speaker series, what experiential learning, what global immersion experiences does that program have to offer? I mean, of course, I can sit here and talk all day long about the fact that our unique differentiators, that we are very small by design, so that each and every one of our students can get that individualized approach. We have a very high, at that 3-month post-graduation placement rate, of over 95% with a, average, a median base and signing bonus of about 140K. And that's great and all, but that isn't just a telltale of just the experience. It isn't the bottom line of what a student walks away with. It's all of the friendships and the bonds that our students make kind of along the way. And in fact, actually, just this past weekend, I was in New York City. So I know that there was an MBA tour event up there. I also had the wonderful opportunity to participate in a Forte Foundation event amongst women in business. And I had to, got the privilege to actually ask these women at this event, what is holding you back? What is the driving factor for why you're looking to get an MBA? And the very question that you addressed to Bruce about the fit was top of mind, especially amongst this population. So hearing their stories of, coming from non-business backgrounds, or do they think that they are cut from the same cloth that will succeed in a corporate role? These are all things that I think many of our listeners, are thinking about. And so I can, tell anybody who's listening out there that there is a home for you, at any MBA program, but it's finding out what makes most sense based off of, do you want to be, of course, in the 3rd largest state here in the US? Do you want to be in sunny Florida? So let me tell you, this weekend was fantastic because it was record lows in Manhattan. And I got to stand there and say, who wants to come to the Sunshine State? I think that my banner ad should have been, it's 80 degrees in Gainesville, Florida right now.
So if you want to stroll on a campus in sandals and shorts under palm trees, you know where to go.
Exactly. In fact, I was thinking about doing this session in a bathing suit today, but I figured that might have been a little distracting.
Oh, and you raise a good point about size, because some people are more comfortable in a smaller, intimate environment. Some people can find their tribe, and it could even be easier in finding your tribe in a larger program. So size is one factor, and urban versus rural is another factor. Do you want to be in a big city or not? But I think fit's a really complicated subject, and it's so individualized, because I think, Naz, you're also right. You can find your place almost in any MBA program. And so a lot of times when I talk to candidates, it's, how welcoming was admissions? I mean, people do make judgments about the school and the culture based on their interactions with the admissions office. JR, do you find that to be the case?
I do. And one thing that I talk about with my team, I talk about with our students and my counterparts, is that admission sets expectations for students, right? Like, we're the first person or team that they meet, and how we essentially interact with them is going to set that stage of how they expect the rest of that program to go. And I think that it also is telling about what are the things that you try to highlight with admissions, what are the types of events, who do we try to connect you with during the process, how easy is that? So it's going to be all of those things that kind of give you, I would say, a little bit of the flavor, right? Like we all talked about, there's some consistent things across every MBA program, but it's going to be those little nuances that is going to essentially be that fit. And I'm going to add one other thing, because as all these questions we were talking about here, I think was interesting, is that introspection is that place to start. Bruce, that was awesome to start there. The next piece, though, is you need to stay true to that as you're interacting with schools, right? because there's always this thing that you think that you have found that right fit, and now you're in the mode of you want to win, right? So that you're trying to figure out, well, what do I need to say? What do I need to share to make them see the fit that I see? Make sure you stay true to that introspection and ask those questions that you want to ask, because that's how we can be most helpful. If you're not honest with us, it's hard for us to say confidently you are that right fit.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because a lot of applicants think they have to fit into some sort of portrait, and often do things that aren't true to themselves to try to get admitted, which gets to the point. Can you really be yourself? I mean, the stakes are high. These are all highly selective programs in the house right here. And people get very anxious about getting accepted. And there is a dance. And so, JR, I wonder, if you might lend some perspective on how do you choose people to dance with?
No, absolutely. So I try to talk maybe in analogies, right? So like when I say about being true to yourself there, like you want to still put your best foot forward. You want to feel prepared. It's almost like you want to have that etiquette for dining, right? Like when you're going to an important dinner, you don't want to be worried and stressed out. Do I use this right fork? Is that right? You want to be comfortable enough in the environment that you can have that really good interaction and conversation. So I think that's what people need to be prepared for. You don't have to worry about, I have planned out my life to the nth degree. Do you think I can go to this company in this specific role in this specific city? Because those of us that have been doing this for a long while, we know that the likelihood as you go through these programs, you'll be introduced to new things. Your likes, your dislikes, they could kind of change a little bit. So it's more about really understanding yourself and having a good conversation about how you're going to make decisions and what's important to you, rather than you have the well laid out plan for the next 15 years of your life.
Right. The other thing that it's, I think, important to point out is that admissions in business school is holistic, that it's not merely focused on what your GPA was in your undergraduate years or what your standardized test score is. Naz, can you speak to the holistic nature of admissions and all the different factors that you look into to decide whether or not to admit a student?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, John. And I think that all of us can speak to that in the sense of, of course, we're looking at, does that individual come with at least the academic, kind of background to say, give us that confidence that they can handle the rigor of our curriculum. Of course, we're looking for, I think our last incoming group had an average GMAT score of a 685 and an average GRE of a 312 and a solid undergraduate GPA. But of course, those aren't only the only picture that we're looking at. It's how coachable is that student? What type of grit does that student possess? What qualities does this individual have that we know they will be fantastic brand ambassadors for the Warrington brand for years to come? And really, it boils down to the intangible leadership, opportunity that we see in these students. And in fact, as part of the application process, not only will you meet with either myself or one of my team members, but the interview incorporates our business career coach, Carly Eskew, also incorporates our academic advisor and our student affairs and engagement personnel, because at the end of the day, being small or large doesn't matter. We want to make sure that we can manage those expectations, because at the end of the day, if a student is going to be quitting their job and moving to Gainesville, Florida, we want to make sure that fit is there and that they are ready to roll up their sleeves and be excited about, all of the opportunities that we have to offer here at the Warrington College of Business. So, it's about the grit, the coachability, the excitement to join this program. It's the excitement to be able to quit your job and move to the swamp for, 10 months, 12 months, or 24 months, depending on what it is that you want to do. And also not being so, structured in what you want to do post-graduation, because this is a learning opportunity. So many of our students, they start off saying, I want to be in XYZ industry. They come through the program, they do more introspection, right? They understand more who they are and what type of impact they want to have, and they leave different, with different objectives. In fact, JR, you brought up a great point. It's, as a prospective student, I tell students, give yourself grace. You don't have a crystal ball. So part of, the admissions is not only managing the expectation from the prospect side, but also as we navigate, the admissions process is letting students know what their potential is and how that potential can really be reached here at whatever institution they choose. Because at the end of the day, it's a symbiotic relationship. Whatever program you choose, you will forever feed into their brand, and they will feed into your own personal brand.
Yes, that's very true. Now, Bruce, you have some different assessment tools that you use at Yale to look at candidates. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing and why you do it that way?
Sure, yeah, happy to do that. And I think it's all in, sort of to JR and Naz's points, I think it's all in the in furtherance of the idea of being more holistic, of trying to get more inputs into the process, to not rely disproportionately on things like test scores and grades. Those are, helpful markers in getting at, midpoint performance. So in a 2-year full-time MBA, sort of the first year performance, those are helpful predictors of that, but that's all that they help predict. And so, and obviously to Naz's point, we're admitting students who we want to obviously to be successful in the classroom, but also to be successful after they graduate and have impact as an alumnus or an alumna. And that's really, it's that dual focus. And so as we're constructing our admissions process, we want to be mindful not just of making sure that we're admitting people who are prepared for the classroom experience and can get as much out of that aspect of the experience as possible, but also who have the potential to be kind of those transformative leaders we're looking to bring through our schools. And so as part of that, we do have our video questions and our behavioral assessment are two pieces of that. And we've had both in place for, I get video questions over 10 years, the behavioral assessment maybe almost 10 years at this point, maybe 8+ years. And the idea is the video questions are, you submit your online application, and so we read your essay and read the recommendations and look at your transcript and your test scores. But we want to have a better sense of you, who you are. And so those are what pre-recorded questions that we give you, and then you will kind of record them in the moment. They're extemporaneous, and then they're added to your file, so we can get a little bit of a more, as I like to say, 3-dimensional sense of you as an individual. And then the behavioral assessment is something we've developed with ETS, that's the organization obviously that runs the GRE, and we've been working with them since way back when. This was an instrument that was originally bought from West Point for officer development, and that they took that on and used it mostly for development purposes, but we've adapted it. And I think right now, we might not be, but for a time, we were the only school using this to adapt it for the high stakes admissions context. And again, it's meant to get a little bit more, get a sense of your interpersonal skills. It's not a soft skills, it's not an EQ, it's more meant to help inform, again, your academic potential. Now we might broaden it and look at it a little bit further. But the idea is to be more expansive in who we're admitting, and being able to look beyond things like grades and scores. And it's I won't go into the details of it, but the idea is really to diversify the set of inputs. So when we're talking about holistic review and talking about how candidates want to position themselves, I'm reminded of one of my favorite cartoons, generally my favorite admissions cartoon, which is a father and son standing outside of a door that says marked admissions. And the father is turning to the son saying, "Now remember, son, be the yourself we talked about." And I think that's a recognition that, admissions is an artificial process. We only see slices of you and small portraits, pieces of you as a person. And so what we're trying to do is broaden what we see and get a broader base and greater insight into who you are. And I think that's what we're all trying to do in various ways. And I think it's an important part of bringing people who will be great community members, really successful, and just kind of just have tremendous impact after they graduate.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Bruce. I'm glad you made it. I wonder if each of you can tell me, 3 hallmarks of your MBA program. What are the 3 things that you think make your program unusual, different, special, make it the experience that it truly is? Bruce, why don't you start with Yale?
Yeah, happy to kick it off and go back around the horn, maybe. I think we could all talk about so many different things. I think the 3 things I would talk about are, first of all, so we believe we are the most integrated business school with our home university. When you come to Yale SOM, you come to Yale. And that's a really, powerful thing to be part of such an eminent university and to be able to tap into all the resources that Yale has to offer. And for example, in our 2-year program, after you've completed the core curriculum and you're taking electives, you can take them anywhere at Yale without limit. And I think that's really a special thing. So you can tap into the law school, School of Public Health, the environment school, drama, architecture, the entire university is open to you. So I think that connection and that ability to sort of really take advantage of what Yale has to offer is key. We also feel that we're the most distinctively global US business school. I think all of us we're trying to educate global leaders who will have impact on a global scale. And so trying to think about how we can do that. And John, I know you know this well from dating back to sort of the time when Ted was dean. The Global Network for Advanced Management is a really distinctive model for doing that. And we have opportunities that exist by connecting students to our 30 plus sort of network schools around the globe on all continents, 5 continents. There are maybe not every continent. I don't know if we have any schools in Antarctica yet, but that will really allow you to have that distinctively global experience. And then the last thing I would say, the third thing, is that we feel we're the best source of elevated leaders across all regions and sectors. Our founding mission, dating back to the beginning of the school, is to educate leaders for business and society. It's a broad multi-sector mission. We want our students to have impact, across not just the private sector, but the public and nonprofit sector. And the way that we do that is through we feel our distinctive integrated curriculum, which really has you thinking very broadly in an interdisciplinary way. It's teaching a lot of the same material, but orienting it much differently and having you become a broad thinker in the management context. And we think that that's another really distinctive hallmark of the school. So those are the 3 things I would point to.
Yeah, definitely. JR, 3 things about Tepper that make the MBA program terrific.
Awesome. Thanks, John. So I'll start off on the curriculum side. Our 2 main focuses are on being comfortable in a data-rich environment. That does not mean every student is going to leave as a data scientist. You can do that if you want. You can go real far down that rabbit hole and have, world-class skills. But it's really about understanding how do you use the information at your disposal to be able to create unique and innovative solutions. But we pair that with a really strong leadership development curriculum, both in the classroom and outside, because what we found is you can have the most innovative solution, but if you can't communicate it, get others to buy into it, it's not going to have that impact that you want. So it's going to be balancing those exceptional problem solving skills with the ability to create that impact with it. Bruce, you were talking about your interdisciplinary approach as a university. That's something that we very much believe in here at Carnegie Mellon as well. We believe that the world's biggest problems are not siloed to any particular area. So in particular, when they built the new Tepper Quad years ago, it was a hub for campus. Other programs at Carnegie Mellon have classes in our building. Our welcome center is there. It's there to ensure that there's always going to be that cross collaboration between all the students for Carnegie Mellon. And just like Bruce, you can take as many electives outside the business school as you like, part of your curriculum. And we also try to take some of those barriers away so you can do most of those pass fail, right? Because you're not going to go set the curve in a graduate level computer science class, right. But you may need to be in that environment. And then the last is really going to be that community. I know you're right, like every program is very prideful. You're going to have that community that is going to support you there. Things that we really enjoy about ours is I feel like we are large enough to have a lot of the benefits as some of those really large MBA programs, the amount of corporate partnerships that we have, just giving you those opportunities, but we're small enough that everybody has an opportunity for each opportunity. There's not points that you have to use to only choose a few opportunities. You have that ability to be able to, at a moment's notice, change your direction and really be able to keep flexible and agile there. And because it's that community of that size, typically it's that community that's very supportive, right? Like when I reach out to alums and I'm having a conversation, there isn't a conversation that doesn't happen to say, have you also met? And then putting me in contact with them, right? So it's about not so much giving you the time, but it's about giving you that next step.
Right, that's great. Naz, your 3 things, and I know that you have more than one residential MBA program, so that may be one of them.
Yeah. So to your point, John. So I think for us, it's the fact that we are able to deliver a curriculum or different types of curriculum based off of our student needs. So we do have a 1 year, 2 1-year accelerated MBA programs. So you can get in and out, in less than 10 or 12 months. If you do or don't have a business degree, that's okay. You can complete the program in a very short period of time, which really, enhances that return on investment, which I think all of our students are ultimately looking to do. Of course, we also have our traditional 2-year format that allows students to have that time to really explore what it is that they want to do. So I would say that our kind of 3 hallmarks, though, would be the student-centric experience, and that goes both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. So we put a lot of emphasis on personal and professional development. In fact, I'm super jazzed to say that our students just won the race and case competition. So a bunch of Floridians going and being able to show up at a case competition and win the ski portion of it. Talk about, that is pretty incredible, because, just saying, snow is not, something that we see every day here in Florida. But I think that dedication to, professional development through speaker series, storytelling seminars, through, Excel training, Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, constantly learning about how AI is going to be, kind of integrated within not only our student experience, but our professional experience. So I think that our ability to be agile with our professional and personal development opportunities, number 1. Number 2 is having that dedicated career coach. As we said, they are, Carly and team, they start even at the prospecting stage to make sure we can manage those expectations early on, that we can really get the right fit of that student who we know can be a phenomenal leader in whichever industry they ultimately place into. And then I'll also add that number 3 is the robust scholarship opportunities we offer. Full ride. Almost 100% of our students are getting a full tuition scholarship. Unless you are, being funded by your company, or your joint degree student here on campus, you can expect to get, a scholarship. Now, most of our students are getting a full 100% tuition scholarship. And that is something that already is a huge differentiator, because especially when you're thinking about that return on investment, looking to leave your employment, we want to minimize those barriers. And then who doesn't want to be a Florida Gator? John, this list could continue on and on and on.
Indeed. Let's talk a little bit about ROI, because, one of the surprises for me, frankly, is the fact that domestic applicants have been declining in the U.S. for a number of years. And to me, it's a mystery, maybe because I'm such a believer in the MBA degree that I think it's a no-brainer investment. And I know part of this is demographic, and part of it is the fact that we've had, a very strong economy, even given all the uncertainty out there, that has kept a lot of people in their jobs. But it's clear the ROI is obvious. I mean, MBAs have graduated this past year with record or near record compensation agreements with their new employers. The degree and the education and the experience you get has never been better. And the networks have never been better, because schools have heavily invested in those networks to keep them strong. And the truth is, it's the people you meet in almost any MBA program are people that you want at your dining room table for the rest of your life. I mean, you're going to create enduring, meaningful friendships of like-minded, ambitious people who want to do something with their lives. So I wonder if we can talk a little bit about how too many people look at those employment reports and make the calculation of whether or not an MBA is worth it merely on the basis of starting compensation. And incidentally, that's not a terrible thing on one level, because the compensation levels are extremely high. But Naz, can you address what the longer term ROI on an MBA degree might be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that one of the topics that continues to surface as I'm speaking to our alums and our current students is the confidence, right? To be a better just consumer of everything, right? As you're buying a house, a car, a new laptop, whatever the case may be, the ROI is huge. And I think looking at those numbers is important. It's important to kind of just see as I would say, looking at the numbers less so from, what that bottom line is, but rather where are students placing geographically, what types of industries, functional areas, those are important things to look at. And I think also taking that with a grain of salt, I think, I can say this being the Floridian on the panel, right, is that looking at the average cost of living, that's something that is oftentimes overlooked when we're looking at these average outgoing salaries is, students are drawn to those big numbers, but also taking into account, where you're living geographically, as well as what is kind of filling, you personally, right? And so recognizing that not all industries are going to pay at the same level. And so I think if you go back to that first topic of introspection, that will be hugely beneficial. But it's looking at these numbers and taking them with a grain of salt and looking also not at the most recent placement numbers, but what have the trends been? And what is that student satisfaction? So also, if you're looking at those bottom line numbers, looking at rankings that establish or also, highlight student experience and how students feel their experience was as they went through the program, because that's part of the ROI piece as well. When you talk about the value prop, it shouldn't just be about the bottom line, but all of the other facets that we've been touching up on over the last 45 minutes.
Yeah. JR, what's your perspective on long-term ROI for an MBA?
Yeah, so I think it's a great question, like you said. I think it's always interesting, digging into the data of career reports and then kind of understanding those pieces, because there are different starting salaries depending on the industry that you may be interested in.
Exactly.
But what I think is interesting, whenever I think about when I talk to those alums that are out there, there's not going to be job boards later in your career, right? Like the being able to move and be adaptive and kind of, having those maybe those agile skills or network to help you navigate life, a lot of times is going to be that thing that it's harder to wrap your mind around, because you don't know what's going to come later, right? Like you just assume that there's going to be things there, but that's typically, if someone struggles, that's where it's going to struggle, would be years down the line. So I think it's, all about the learning, as we talked about early in this, like what are those skill sets you're going to develop, even that mindset of how you essentially approach life or your career. But then in the end, it's going to be those network pieces as well that's going to help you navigate that. Because when something goes wrong, and I know right before the start, we were talking about, right, like tech layoffs, what's going on there. Usually everyone thinks that if something goes wrong, it's happening to them. It may not be happening to everyone else. So having those people that you can kind of reach back out to, rely on to help you navigate those situations is that long-term benefit that usually is not top of conversation, obviously, when we're talking about admissions for an MBA program.
Yeah, that's really true. And I would just say, the research pretty firmly shows that if you have a graduate degree, particularly an MBA, you're less likely to be unemployed during your life than if you don't. And you're more likely to have a job that's more meaningful and more fulfilling than those who don't have MBAs. And you're more likely to advance in your job more quickly and more decisively if you have an MBA. Those are all things that you might not think of when you're looking at the employment report and saying, well, here's the median starting salary for this particular job or discipline. And yet those are really, in many ways, far more important, frankly, to your well-being, to your ability to make a difference in the world than what your starting paycheck's going to be. Bruce, your take on it?
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly. And John, I think you and I probably sort of have drunk from the same bowl of Kool-Aid. In the sense, I'm a huge proponent of the MBA and the transformative nature of it. And I think, you set this question up right in the sense that the short-term ROI is very strong. You will recoup that investment very quickly. But the true value of the degree is not in that first job out. It's in the full arc of your professional career. And the way I tend to look at it, and I think in terms of like the declining domestic, I think a lot of it is, or some aspect of it is people who end up getting sort of 1-year masters or masters of accounting or finance or sort of data science. And those can be a little bit deceptive because there will be great first jobs, immediate, but the MBA is about leading and managing and having that kind of impact in the long term. And the way I look at it is it's about raising your ceiling. Where can you go? How high can you go? And that's what the MBA really provides you. And I think, and to JR and Naz, all the things we talked about in terms of the career opportunities, the security, the ability to be able to pivot, the flexibility. The thing about the MBA is, if you get a one-year master's, for example, you're set up for a particular discipline. The MBA can really, the breadth of what you can do with an MBA is almost limitless. And I think Naz talked about this a little earlier. That's one of the great values is it is something, in another session, I talked about how I have a legal background. I used to practice law, and it used to be, and maybe still is the case where, the thought is if you're sort of young and smart and you don't know what you want to do, you go get a law degree. And to some degree, that's the case. But actually, if you're young and smart and you're not entirely sure what you want to do, you should get an MBA because it opens so many more doors in a really kind of, and in the process, to Naz's point earlier, going through the program will actually help you discover things you didn't even know existed, paths you didn't even know were possible. And so I think that can set you on a completely different direction than you might have been going otherwise. So I think there's so many dimensions on which an MBA can be really truly transformative of your both personal and professional lives.
Yeah, that's so true. Look, higher education in general opens the mind and allows you to live a more generous life for yourself on multidimensional levels. And I think a graduate degree in business really does that because, people who come out of these programs are very tight with each other and they learn from each other so much, and the diversity of the classes and the excellence of the faculty. And the fact that business schools are very market responsive compared to other schools and departments in a university means that you're getting the best possible, most top knowledge, skills, and tools to make you succeed. It's really a special thing. Here's the other thing about business education that I really love. And it's something that doesn't occur in a med school, in a law school, in a school of computer science, an engineering school, or any other school at the university. Professional development. Business schools excel at sanding down the rough edges of a person and allowing a person to be as effective as they can personally. And I wonder if we might just devote a little time to how much effort and what investment your schools have made in doing that with people, helping them plan their careers, but more importantly, develop as a whole person. And you're developing the personal as well as the professional. Bruce, can you speak to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. And I mean, that's a broad question because there's so many aspects of the experience that touch that. The one other thing about the MBA, full-time two-year MBA in particular, it's an immersive experience. You are really, and it's not just the classroom, it's what's happening outside the classroom. It's sort of the clubs, the activities, everything that goes into the experience. And so, I was speaking at Yale, and I imagine, that's the similar elsewhere, sort of Florida and Carnegie Mellon and beyond. There are academic pieces that help you with this in terms of, the first course you take at Yale is called Managing Groups and Teams. And obviously, to be an effective leader, you need to know how to work with others effectively. You have to understand how you engage, how to be a good team leader, how to be a good team member, and not just leadership or followership. All those things are relevant, and that's the first of a number of courses that speak to this skill set. We have a course called Global Virtual Teams that actually touches more specifically on how to manage a global team that is dispersed geographically across sort of time zones, across languages, across geographies, working virtually. And so that's a particular skill that's become, I think, more prevalent. This predates the pandemic, but since the pandemic, that's become a more pervasive need. So those academic pieces are also the sort of the career pieces. And our career development office has it's a full service curriculum, and it's not just about finding the first job. To JR's point earlier, it's about finding a lifetime's worth of jobs, so the lifetime of searches. You actually have access to our career development office throughout your career, but the idea is not just to get you that first job, but to teach you how to make those pivots when you aren't on campus, when you don't have that on-campus recruiting, 5, 10, 15 years down the road. But there are, beyond just that piece, there are sessions on, things like, networking, and there's a session called small talk is a big thing, and you have to understand how to, John, to your point, to polishing those rough edges is an important thing, and understanding how to, and to JR's point about, no, you don't have to worry about, literally we've had people write essays about, being stressed out about what, going on a recruiting dinner and not knowing what silverware, what fork to use, and how do you sit, and so just knowing how to engage in those circumstances, so you're not thinking about, oh gosh, what is this glass for versus that. You can know that, and then focus on the substance of what you're trying to do. So things like that. And then obviously there's sort of the clubs, both the affinity clubs, the professional clubs, the social clubs, that will help you and develop those, use the skills you've learned in class and apply them and hone them. As well as some other activities that will really kind of help develop you as a whole person, as opposed to just the technical side. So I think I'm sure we all have that, but those are some of the things that are most relevant for us here at Yale.
Yeah. Now, Bruce, when you were at law school, how much attention was paid to all that?
Like somewhere, thinking a fraction, it was probably diddly over squat. Yeah, so 0. Yeah, it was.
Can you
that was not what it was about.
Yeah, your school's devotion to personal and professional development.
Yeah, no, and I love this question because it is a personal investment that the program places on each and every one of our students. In fact, it starts before a student has ever stepped foot on our campus. In fact, we offer free GMAT boot camps to prospective students. So that's how we're investing in our students even before they've arrived here on campus. So if they need some extra, kind of touch points on how to master the GMAT exam, that even starts before they've enrolled. Now, of course, as a student, we have placed a huge emphasis on personal and professional development. In fact, the most recent focus has been in well-being. In fact, we hired a director of well-being that is helping our students navigate not only the tough conversations, the tough times, but all the stressors. Whether you are a full-time executive, weekend professional, or online student, you have access to our well-being director, and she is creating content that is relevant to each and every one of our population. So not only are we investing in the well-being students directly, but of course, building them, curating them, cultivating those leadership skills through the Excel training, Lean Six Sigma, storytelling, bringing speakers to campus, networking events, and in fact, John, in a couple of weeks, we're taking a group of students to one of the national forests right around the corner from us, and they are doing I was joking and Naked and Afraid. It's not Naked and Afraid, but they are doing primitive leadership skills that, in fact, we know that when you have no, access to internet or anything else, how as a group of peers will you manage to hopefully not just survive, but thrive and really hone in on your personal leadership skills. So we are left and right making investments in our students to ensure that they are growing to be the Gators, once again, that we know they can be.
JR, your take on all this.
Yeah, and John, so I mean, part of your first question with that was, what are we doing right now? Like, what do we kind of see in this future, right? I think what's interesting is the work environment has changed more in the last 3 years than it probably has in the last 20. So we're now trying to prepare people to kind of go into this environment that management and leading others and getting people to buy into things in communication is probably the most difficult it's been. So we have kind of honed in on those different types of concepts and trying to create some systematic things as well as some experiences to give people experience in that. First example is we have everyone start with EQ 2.0. So everybody kind of understanding yourself, but also how you interact with others. And then we build off of that. One thing that we consistently talk to our students about is actually helping others around you reach their full potential as well. Because if you think about you going off into corporate America or doing your own thing, your own individual success or your own individual impact is not going to be enough to make the overall impact you want. You need to make everyone else around you better, and you need to have that mindset. So how do we create that as kind of that ethos throughout the program to ensure that when our graduates go somewhere, it's not just them making the impact, but everybody else rises up around them as well?
Yeah, exactly. Well, now our time is out, but can each of you share how People who are interested in the program can get in touch with you or a member of your team. And of course, each of these schools has fantastic websites, and that's the first place to start. You get a wealth of information about how to apply, what's important, and a lot of guidance really overall to help you through the process through the website. But if in fact someone wants to reach out, who should they be, how should they do that? Bruce, we'll start with you.
Sure. No, I would start by reiterating, websites are great, and ours, som.yale.edu. One important feature, which I think I'm sure a number of schools have, we have student ambassadors and students who you can connect with and can tell you about their experience. So that's a great resource. In terms of the admissions office, our email, mba.admissions@yale.edu, I think is probably the best way. And then, for general questions, and then we will kind of direct it to the right person, and whether it's me or others. For Yale emails are very easy. It's also first name, last name. So bruce.delmonico@yale.edu if you want to reach out to me directly. Although mba.admissions@yale.edu is probably the best way.
Terrific. JR?
Yeah, so perfect. So just like I said, there's all those things on the website. When you're thinking through how to connect to someone personally, the general email always has someone checking it. So if you need something quicker and immediate, I would always go to the general inbox. We have our entire staff on the website with profiles, with our email addresses. So if you want to connect with someone in particular for any particular reason, you go there, you can reach out directly. So we're not hard to find, but if you know what you want, it's easier to get your answer quickly.
Super. Naz?
Mine's easy, naz@warrington.ufl.edu, or who's ready to take my cell number? No?
There you go. All right. Hey, Naz, Bruce, JR, thank you so much for a great session. Really appreciate it. And for all of you out there, I hope you learned a lot. And I hope you're eager to apply and make it happen. Really, this is a spectacular experience to have in your life. It truly is transformative. It will make a difference to you in every possible way, personal and professional. And yeah, I drink the same Kool-Aid that Bruce, Naz, and JR drink every day. This is a no-brainer, okay? A no-brainer investment. Go for it. Hey, thanks, guys.